We are having a session for our Northeastern participants and for others as well. And we are very lucky to have Dr. Krishna Gogoi, who's a senior consultant in charge of microbiology in the Sri Shankaradeva Nethralaya, Guwahati in Assam. And he is going to talk about diagnostic test accuracy. Dr. Vivek, I would request you to formally invite Dr. Gogoi for the lecture today.
Yes, ma'am. Over to Kusum. Dr. Kusum.
Thank you very much, ma'am. A very well good afternoon to all of you. You are all welcome to our next series of eco sessions of capacity building in Northeast region. And today we have Dr. Krishna Gogoi with us for the lecture which is based on DTA study and design. Dr. Krishna Gogoi is working as a senior consultant and he is also lab director in the Nethralaya that is Shankaradeva Nethralaya, Guwahati, Assam. She has been investigator of various research projects that was funded by ICMR and DBT. She has published various research papers in international and national journals of repute. Now, I would like to request Dr. Krishna Gogoi. Ma'am, shall we start?
Yes, please. He's there? Has he joined?
Yes, ma'am, she has joined.
Okay.
Over to you, ma'am. Dr. Krishna, your mic is muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon. So at the outset, I'd like to thank Professor Meenu Singh ma'am and Department of EBM, PGI MER Chandigarh for giving me this opportunity. And I'd also like to mention that some of the slides have been adapted from Cochrane training modules and other materials which have been used. I have mentioned the specific references. So I'll just switch off my video because there is some network disturbance going on. Share the. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yeah, it's just starting to come. Yes, it's visible now.
Is it visible? Okay.
Yes, it's visible now.
Okay. So, the objectives of today's session will be to understand the role of diagnostic test accuracy studies, the different study designs, and reporting a DTA study. So, as we all know, a large majority of decisions which are made in clinical practice depend on the results of medical testing. Now, the first step in assessing the value of a medical test before performing comparative impact studies is the assessment of the test accuracy. Test accuracy is the ability of a test to discriminate between different patient groups like diseased and non-diseased. Now, how do we define medical test? It is a characteristic, measurement, observation, or medical procedure made on a person that provides information that relates to some aspect of their health status. Now, diagnostics is complex and it involves several steps like history taking, physical examination, then reaching a differential diagnosis, which will be followed by subsequent testing, which is performed to reach a final diagnosis with minimal uncertainty. Now, all these DTA can be conducted in all these types of medical tests. In the subsequent slide, I have put up some of the examples of some DTA reviews on each of these characteristics. So first is patient characteristics, then medical history taking, physical examination findings, questionnaires, physiological measurements, laboratory tests on body fluid or tissue, imaging tests, and endoscopic investigations. Now, gender and race, ethnicity, these are complex traits and are particularly useful and important because each includes the social dimensions which is necessary for understanding its impact on health, and each has some genetic underpinnings to varying degrees. So none of these are good tests on their own, but often they may be combined or used in a risk score or enhances the interpretation of a laboratory test result. So some examples are maternal age association with Down syndrome, computation of renal function lab tests, and so on. Now, medical history taking, this is a skill, and it helps not only in differential diagnosis, but also reaching a diagnosis of a particular health condition. So examples of this study, this is one study where they have done a diagnostic accuracy of the Conners adult ADHD rating scale in post-secondary population. So next is physical examination. So following history taking, the physicians, they always test for signs of a particular disease, and DTA can be conducted on those physical examination findings. Like here are the two examples: diagnostic DTA of jolt accentuation for headache in acute meningitis, and then a DTA of physical examination test of ankle or foot complex. Next is questionnaires. Now questionnaires are part of medical history taking, but DTA can be conducted on questionnaires alone itself. These are some of the examples, like the first one is accuracy of Holy questions and EPDS in identifying depression and other mental disorders in early pregnancy. And the second one is a DTA of a screening questionnaire and algorithm in identification of adults with epilepsy. Now, physiological examination, this is a broad categorization and includes routine tests like blood pressure measurements, heart rate, respiratory rate, body temperature, ECGs, EEGs, EMGs, etc. And DTA can be conducted on these also. Now, this is one example where they have done a DTA on lung auscultation in adult patients with acute pulmonary pathologies. Now, tests on samples of body fluid or tissue. Now, this is one domain where we find a vast body of literature or DTAs on tests on samples of body fluid and tissues. Some examples are DTA on rapid assays for diagnosis of malaria, leptospira, cervical cytology versus human papillomavirus testing in cancer screening, expert MTV versus expert ultra, then serum inflammatory markers in different diseases, serum markers in Down syndrome. And this is one example, a recent one, that is D-dimer test for excluding the diagnosis of pulmonary embolism. Now, with advances in imaging techniques, this is another domain where a lot of DTA reviews have been coming up. So most of them are comparing the latest available technique to the earlier ones or the gold standard of diagnosis of that particular disease. Now, endoscopic procedures, they have both diagnostic and therapeutic intent. Therefore, evaluation is very challenging. Now, endoscopy and imaging, one thing we have to keep in mind that these two procedures, they can detect multiple conditions in the patients. Therefore, the DTA studies on endoscopy and imaging studies should be very carefully planned and evaluated. Now, what is the carrier of a medical test? Now, there will be many queries on medical test, like whether it has the capacity to differentiate between disease or non-disease condition. Is it better than the existing one, or existing test, or the existing kit? Does it provide additional information on the condition of the patient or help make a clinical decision? How will the patient be benefited? at which level the test has to be introduced. So all these questions, it forms the medical carrier of the carrier of a medical test. Now, whenever a new test is there, the first thing is the technical evaluation. Now, in this stage, technical evaluation, only a single test is evaluated, and the samples are basically construct samples or stored samples. And we have to have proof of concept regarding repeatability, reproducibility, intra and inter-observer variation. Now, once this has passed the technical evaluation, only then we can move on to the clinical evaluation, where it can be divided into early phase and late phase. Now, when we move on to the clinical evaluation, here the test is performed on a clinically relevant series of patients or a group of patients. Now, what are the different applications of this medical test? So this can be performed to study predisposition, that is, who could develop the disease, for screening, like who has asymptomatic disease, for diagnosis, who has a symptomatic disease, staging, how advanced is the disease, prognosis, how progressive will the disease be, so the future impact of the disease. Now, stratification, like who will be the responder, efficacy, whether the drug is effective or not, for monitoring, that means whether the disease is controlled or not, recurrence, whether there is evidence of relapse of the disease. So diagnostic accuracy studies, they evaluate the ability of medical tests to correctly classify patients as having or not having a specific target condition. This target condition may be a disease stage, response, or benefit from therapy, or an event or condition in the future. So for carrying out a diagnostic TTA study, most important is the questions, formulation of the question. Now, this is very important, because if the question does not pertain to or aim at the clinical practice at all, like how will the estimates of the test, which are sensitivity and specificity, answer my questions, or benefit in practice, or benefit the patient, then we are not looking at TTA. Probably it will be some other study. So the identification of a clinical pathway is recommended in evaluation of a diagnostic test. The basic requirement for carrying out a DTA, to conduct a DTA, is an acronym PIRT. P for participants, I for index test, that is the test under evaluation, and reference centered or the comparator, which is the best way available to identify the target condition and used for verification of results of the index test. Then the target condition. So first we have to define what is the target condition to be diagnosed. Secondly, who are the targeted patients? So these will be our participants. So these may be patients like those presenting with certain signs or symptoms, or those having undergone specific previous tests of features identified at initial presentation, or just selected based on age, sex, or other risk factors as in screening, or maybe having had no previous testing. Now, in which setting will the test be used? The setting may be primary, secondary, or tertiary care, or more specifically, the emergency department, outpatient clinic, or in the general community. Now, we have to define the role of the index test in the clinical pathway. So a triage test is used before the existing test, and its results determine which patients will undergo the existing test. While an add-on test is used after an existing test to improve the diagnostic accuracy of the testing strategy. A replacement test, it aims to replace an existing test, either because it is expected to have higher diagnostic accuracy, or is less invasive, is cheaper, or easier to run. A new test is a test that opens up completely new test treatment pathway. Now, what are the other tests in the existing clinical pathway? The test and the evaluation, that is the index test, it may be positioned before or after other tests in the specific clinical setting, which will be defined by the guiding question of our study. And also a diagnostic workup of a disease will have many additional testing procedures. So all have to be taken into account while designing the study. The sample size calculations for test accuracy studies should be determined prior to recruitment. This is very vital because the precision of the sensitivity estimate will increase with the number of participants with the target condition, that is reference standard positive, and the precision of the specificity estimate will increase with the number of participants without the target condition, that is reference standard negative. We have to identify the downstream consequences of the test results. So bearing in mind that positioning of the index test in our clinical pathway, the downstream consequences of the test results, that is test positive and test negatives, have to be well defined. This is a figure showing the basic design of a DTA study. So it shows the typical design where we have a series of patients who are suspected of having a specific target condition, which are identified through a single set of eligibility criteria. And all these patients will undergo an index test, which is the test under evaluation. And then they have to undergo the reference standard. Now, this reference standard may be a single test or a combination of tests or procedure that is considered the best available method of categorizing participants in a study of DTA as having or not having a target condition. And then the results of the index test and reference standards, they have to be cross-classified in a 2x2 table, and we get 4 subcategories of patients, namely true positive, false negative, and true negative, and from which we can estimate the sensitivity and specificity of these studies. So these are the accuracy test estimates. This is the 2x2 table. This is how it is made. This was already actually discussed in the previous lecture. So I'll just go through this. What are the estimates of the DTA studies? So we calculate sensitivity, specificity, and we can calculate PPV, that is positive predictive value. Then likelihood ratio for positive test, likelihood ratio for negative test, and diagnostic odds ratio. So the diagnostic odds ratio, this is a measure of the effectiveness of a diagnostic test. Now coming to different types of design. So there are, for designing a DTA, there are 2 types of design. One is the comparative design, the other is the non-comparative design. So in a comparative design, we have in the first design, we have a series of patients where we want to check, we want to study the DTA of these 2 tests. Then the series of patients will undergo both the tests, index test A, index test B, and then the reference standard. And then we calculate we estimate the sensitivity and specificity for both the tests, and then we compare test accuracy within the patient. Now, here we have a series of patients where it's for some or other reason, we cannot, unable to perform these tests in all the patients. So we can randomize these patients so that one group receives index test A, the other group receives index test B. However, both the groups have to undergo the same reference standard, and thereafter we estimate the sensitivity and specificity for these tests. And so this will give a test accuracy between randomized group. Now the ideal comparative design is to perform all test and reference standard on all participants, like the first one. However, due to some or other reason, like logistical reason or ethical reasons, if it is not possible, then we can randomize the participants in this way. Now, There are different types of DTP, like we have case series, cross-sectional studies, cohort, case control, and RCTs. So this is we classify the study based into cohort and case control entirely depending on the method of selection of the participants. So in a cohort type study, what happens? The participants are recruited based on suspicion. By suspicion, we mean that maybe the patients presented with particular signs or symptoms, risk factors, and so on, or some results of previous medical test. And then they will undergo the index test and the reference test or the gold standard almost at the same time. And then we do the estimates. Now, one thing we have to understand here is that here it does not matter in which order we are carrying out this test. Whether we are carrying out the reference test, the gold standard earlier to the index test or the after the index test, it doesn't matter as long as it is at the same time without much delay. Now, in case control studies, what happens is we move from the outcome. That means at the beginning of the study, we know that this person is positive and this is negative. And here the reference test on the individual is always done prior to the index test. And in these type of studies, we cannot estimate the predictive values as participants are classified as positive and negative, and we can only estimate specificity and sensitivity. Because this is an artificial result of design where we have kept the ratio of case to control in 1:1, 1:2, or so on. Now this is one example of a case control study where MSME for detection of dementia in clinically unevaluated people age 65 over in community and primary care populations. So here they had the positive status was the Alzheimer's disease in the cases, and the controls were the attendance of the participants. So in the beginning, they knew that who was the patient and who were the controls. Now, this is a non-comparative design. Here we have two series of patients. In one series, we are evaluating index test A, reference standard, and then sensitivity and specificity of this. And then in the other series, we are conducting the index test B and then reference standard. And then we are estimating the sensitivity and specificity. Now, this is comparing test accuracy between studies. Now, these type of models have a lot of bias to it, because we don't know whether it was done in the same timeline, whether during the places may differ, patient groups may differ, diagnostic criteria may differ. And so this is one article where they have evaluated the DTA comparative study based on DTA on comparative study, and they have stated that differences in accuracy estimates between non-comparative and comparative studies were greater than expected by chance, p less than 0.05. So measures of diagnostic accuracy are extremely sensitive to the design of the study, and studies not meeting strict methodological standards usually over or underestimate the indicators of test performance, as well as they limit the applicability of the results of the study. And reports of diagnostic accuracy studies are often insufficiently informative. So to improve the quality of reporting of diagnostic accuracy studies, the START statement was developed. Now, START stands for Standards for Reporting Diagnostic Accuracy. It was first published in 2003, and an update was developed by 85 experts in the field of diagnostic testing and published in 2015. And this is the website where we can avail all the materials regarding START guidelines. Now, the 2015 checklist has 30 items, and we'll just go through some of the important items on this list because it's a big list. So before that, the key START terminologies are medical test, index test, target condition, clinical reference standard. This is also called gold standard, sensitivity, specificity, intended use of the test, role of the test, and indeterminate results. Now, the first item is title or abstract. It states that identification is a study of diagnostic accuracy using at least one measure of accuracy in the title or abstract. Now, this helps in searching for study searches in the internet, Medline, Embase, and any one accuracy estimate out of sensitivity, specificity, PPV, NPV, it should be mentioned in the title or abstract. And it was seen that sensitivity of using these terms in title or abstract was very low at 51% only. And only in 2011, they introduced this term, diagnostic test accuracy study. So this helps in basically searching the study in any database. The start item 5 is methods. It states whether data collection was planned before the index test and reference standard were performed or after. That means we have to clearly mention whether it was a prospective study or a retrospective study. Like in this study on human African trypanosomiasis, they have clearly mentioned this is a prospective study and participants were enrolled consecutively and before obtaining any information on index test or reference standard. So start 9 is on participants, like whether participants formed a consecutive, random or convenience series. Explanation is that the included study participants may be either consecutive series of all patients evaluated for eligibility at the study location, or it could be a sub-selection of this. Now, when this sub-selection, while adopting this sub-selection, we have to be very careful because this is a source of bias. You have to clearly mention whether it was purely random or produced by using a random number of tables or it was less random, because this is where the bias occurs. Now start item number 12A, methods. Definition of and rationale for test positivity cutoffs or result categories of the index test, distinguishing pre-specified from exploratory. So rationale is that future studies should be able to reproduce the test positivity cutoffs and clinicians should be able to apply them in practice. Like in this study on plasma glial fibrillatory acidic protein for differentiating intracerebral hemorrhage, they have clearly defined how they have obtained the cutoff. The GFAP plasma concentration of this value was the mean plus 2 ST. That was treated as cutoff, and they used ROC curve analysis to calculate diagnostic accuracy of GFAP for distinguishing between the conditions. Start item 30A. This is test methods. Whether clinical information and reference standard results were available to the performers or readers of the index test. That is whether it was the study was blinded or not. So this is how they mention. This is a study on preterm birth, DTA. They have clearly mentioned it is a prospective blinded multi-center DTA study, and staff and participants were blinded to the results. Item 19 is on results. Participants, that is flow of participants using a diagram. This is very important because estimates of diagnostic accuracy may be biased if not all eligible participants undergo the index test and the desired reference standard. So we have to exclude those patients who did not undergo the index test or the reference standard. And this is the start 2015 prototype. Sorry. This is how a flow chart should look like. So at the beginning, how many were there? What was why some were excluded? The criteria has to be mentioned. Of these, how many did not undergo the index test? That has again been excluded. Then comes the index test. The index test negative, of which an index test positive, index test inconclusive. Out of these groups, how many did not undergo the reference test, the reference standard? So that has to be excluded. Then in the end, of the study, only these cases who underwent index test and the reference test are taken into account, and we do the estimates. So start item 24 is results. Now test result, that is estimates of DTA and their precision, should be clearly mentioned, such as 95% CI. The smaller the number of study participants, the less precise these estimates will be. So this is one example how they have mentioned the estimates. So we should clearly mention the sensitivity and specificity along with the 95% CI, the upper and the lower cuts. Item 28 is other information, that is registration number and name of registry. Like the study was registered at such and such place. Now, registering study protocols before the initiation in a clinical registry, it ensures that existence of the studies can be identified. Now, the START guidelines or the START checklist can be used by authors. They can be used by peer reviewers. They can also be used by journal editors. And potential advantages of using START is that it improves visibility and utility of the study. There's positive association with the citation rates, positive associations with the journal impact factor, and it is endorsed by more than 200 journals. So to conclude, diagnostic accuracy studies are fundamental for the assessment of diagnostic tests, and measures of diagnostic accuracy are extremely sensitive to the design of the study. Analysis of the test accuracy should be performed in an appropriate method, and we should acknowledge the uncertainty of results. And the study should be reported with transparency using standards for the reporting of diagnostic accuracy study checklist. So these are some of the references. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for such an informative lecture on DTA. Now the participants are kindly requested to post their questions in the chat box, or if they want to ask directly to ma'am, they can ask.
Dr. Vivek has posted a question. Would you like to see that?
I think he has posted the attendance link.
Take it out.
And feedback form.
Okay.
Ma'am, can I ask one question? I'm Dr.
Yes.
Nipun.
Please, Dr. Nipun.
So thank you, ma'am, for the lecture. Sometimes in clinical practice, we find that there are some rare disorders for which we are trying to develop a test. So sometimes we incorporate case control design in such situations because cohort is difficult. So what is in your opinion that once we take out the case control design and develop a test for a condition and then subsequently validate that test in a prospective cohort design, how do you go about it? I mean, have you encountered such situations in lab for rare disorders?
Dr. Bugoi, would you like to take up this question?
I think for such cases where it is a disease of, you are asking, your question is on rare diseases. Am I clear? It's on rare diseases. Rare diseases. So when we want to evaluate a new test, you can evaluate the test, but you already have certain criteria for diagnosing the rare disease. So that you can use as gold standard. And then with that, you can compare the new test. And like I told you, the sample collection is very essential. So it is not always that the prevalence rate of all diseases are equal. So that prevalence rate of that particular disease is required for calculation of sample size. So the statistician will help you to calculate the sample size depending on the prevalence rate. That is how the sample collection comes into play. You get my point? For any disease, first you find out the prevalence and you discuss with the statistician that this is the prevalence. We want a sample size. So he will give you the sample size. And after that, you proceed with the disease or the investigation.
Actually, Dr. Nipun, I think your question was a little different. When we are evaluating a study, it's already been done. Like, when you are evaluating a diagnostic test accuracy of a particular paper, which has already been published. So it's at this point of time, we are not calculating sample size, or we are not calculating, we are looking at something which has already been done. So we have to then go to the all the quadas. There are different tools which are used for evaluating a diagnostic test accuracy study, right? So those would have to be used when we are trying to evaluate that particular study. So basically your question was that in rare diseases, you like many of them might have taken case control study design initially. But
Yes.
when you pick up a particular study, you have to look at a group of patients where the test has been compared to a gold standard test. So, which is possible even in a case control study design. Because in controls also, they might use a particular test and then compare it against a gold standard. For example, let us take two cohorts or a case control study design in which you are trying to test a diagnostic test, say for neonatal sepsis or sepsis in general, and you also have a control, like you have a high risk population in which probably there is a higher risk for development of that disease. And on the other side, you just have control population where the risk is not high. I mean, these are normal risk people. So when you compare a particular test, for example, let us take CRP as a test for, for diagnosis of sepsis, then you will find that CRP in comparison to blood culture, which would be taken as a gold standard for a sepsis study, on one side, and you will have again blood culture compared to CRP, say in a normal cohort who don't have a high risk of developing sepsis. So here you will come out with the sensitivity and specificity. So actually, many of the diagnostic test studies have problems when they test specificity for a particular test from the same cohort where they are also looking at the sensitivity. But actually specificity should be looked at from the control population, because you are trying to see that that test will be negative when the disease is also negative. So that makes it a better study design for comparing a diagnostic test. And again, you will have sensitivity and specificity as your values, and you will have negative and positive predictive values. And ultimately, you will like to see what is the predictive accuracy of a particular test. So this is how I look at your question. Would you like to say anything, Dr. Nipun, on this?
So actually, there are a lot of issues involved when coming to the practice, and so
Yeah.
taking the example of sepsis itself. So if it were to be a cohort design, so you take a patient at high risk of sepsis. So there will be patients who develop blood culture positivity, and they will be taken as a gold standard positive. But what about negative patients? patients without
But
blood
negative,
culture
the patients who are
positivities.
negative, there'll be 3 category of patients, even in this cohort
Yeah.
where you have high
Yes.
risk of developing sepsis. One will be
Yes.
who will be blood culture positive. The other ones will be meeting sepsis criteria, but negative blood
But
culture. That means something like
negative, exactly.
most likely sepsis type of
Probable sepsis.
probable sepsis. And one group
Yes.
will be where they are negative, where the test comes negative. And
Clear-cut negative, right?
yes, but then many people, make a mistake of calculating specificity from these negative patients. Whereas they are otherwise high risk patients, but they haven't developed sepsis. So specificity, it is recommended, should be, calculated from the control group, control population, which is not at a high risk of developing sepsis. Because this midway group, which is there, the one which is most probable sepsis, that is actually when you're calculating your sensitivity, this group is actually not used in diagnostic test accuracy for calculation of sensitivity, unless you modify your criteria. If you for example, in fungal sepsis, you have that criteria where you have fungal culture positive, or there are multiple criteria which can be used even if the culture is negative. You have some other diagnostic tests, they are positive, then you try to compare these but many times these diagnostic tests, if they are a battery of tests, for example, in sepsis, in neonatal sepsis, you have CRP, you have, say, micro ESR, you have a band cell count. So one uses a kind of composite criteria for making a diagnosis, and if you make that as your gold standard, then probably you can calculate your sensitivity of that particular test, even in this population, which is high risk population, which is culture negative, but they are positive on this composite.
So one way of thinking at this problem is also that sometimes whenever there is a gray zone between diseased and non-diseased population, you are
Yes.
trying to develop a test. So the way I look at it and in the literature, you develop a test using the true positive cases and the true negative cases
Yes,
according to the gold standard. Don't take the borderline cases in the development phase.
exactly.
Once you develop a test with a good sensitivity and specificity, then you validate that test's accuracy and the performance, taking whole cohort of patients, even the borderline patients, and then you describe the sensitivity, specificity, positive, negative predictive values. And that is how I look at this question.
You're absolutely right. And that is why, many times this new test which comes up, which is otherwise considered to be just a diagnostic, one of the diagnostic tests which is being compared to a gold standard, that has a capacity to become the gold standard. For example, you have GeneXpert in the diagnosis of tuberculosis. Most of the tests which are used in diagnosis of tuberculosis will be compared against the positivity of Mycobacterium tuberculosis or AFP, microbiological positivity, or you have histopathological positivity of the mycobacteria. But when this test came in, it was found that it has a much higher sensitivity in comparison to the AFP, isolation of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So this has kind of become now a gold standard, which may be combined with positivity of AFP on in microbiological specimen. So some of these tests, when they far exceed the sensitivity value of the existing test, and they are reliable as well, then they have, they tend to become gold standards themselves. So in subsequent studies, even that test is used as, so the gold standard itself gets modified. And that is likely to happen in rare diseases, more likely.
And one more problem which I face in these studies is the incorporation bias, which I tend to see is that,
yeah,
I mean, the
because
test which is used is
yeah, you are standardizing the test itself, against a population where the disease is present. So would you like to just explain what is incorporation bias?
The index test which we are trying to performance of, if that index test contains the information which is there in the gold standard, or what reference standard
So
you are
that
using.
is what happens when you use most probable sepsis as your gold standard. For example, the diagnosis of most probable sepsis may also develop on its CRP positivity.
Yes.
So if you're comparing CRP as a test, and you take your gold standard as most probable sepsis along with the true positive,
Yes.
then there is a possibility of an incorporation present. But that means the same test which is being tested has been used for diagnosing that particular condition.
Yeah, so that message I wanted to be clear for the audience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you,
do
ma'am.
you have any more questions?
Thank you, ma'am. We have a couple of questions in the chat box.
Yes.
The first question is from Dr. Kamal. I think he's there. Dr. Kamal, kindly unmute yourself and you can ask the question.
Is written index test negative, index test positive, index test inconclusive. All we are doing final diagnosis. Yes, so final diagnosis actually depends upon the presence of the gold standard being positive. So when you have these tests, when the index test is positive and the gold standard is also positive, and that is where you calculate the sensitivity of a particular test. And index test negative is when you are also having your denominator as either a control population or something in which the gold standard is also negative. Then you try to calculate the specificity of that particular condition. So making a definitive diagnosis depends upon the test positivity as well as on the clinical suspicion, as was told by Dr. Gogoi initially, that diagnosis of a particular condition doesn't just depend on the test positivity, because test can sometimes be falsely positive. So all these things would have to be considered. Is it necessary to register the DTS study? If yes, is it in CTRI? Yes, nowadays people are registering diagnostic tests studies also, because diagnostic tests are also a kind of intervention sometimes which is being used. For example, if you have a new test, say RT-PCR test, which is there for COVID, and you have a rapid antigen test, which is there for COVID. Plus there are, several new tests which are coming up, which are, you can do it yourself type of tests at home, like a strip test, which may be available. So for comparison of these tests also, one can register these studies in the CTI. But you should be very clear that these are not randomized controlled trials. You may choose your patients in a random sequence, for avoiding a clustering. But otherwise, for example, recently today only ICMR has published a sero survey on COVID, on patients, on population. So if all these patients came from one particular area where the prevalence of infection was very high, for example, if they just came from Maharashtra, then you will find that high seropositivity is okay. But if they came from Mizoram or from northeastern states where the rates are not yet as high, then you may find that if there were no patients included from that area, then those results will not be applicable to that particular population. So it's extremely important that we see the universality of a particular problem which is there. After all, there is a research question involved even in diagnostic tests, and we need to justify a particular investigation and then interpretation of that particular investigation in light of what is the baseline prevalence of that particular disease in that population.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we have no more questions in the
So
chat.
what I just want to speak to the Northeastern groups is that we will now be having lectures from some of their own teachers who are there in Northeastern states. And we will also have some sessions which will be devoted to discussion of COVID infection in Northeastern states. And we would invite some cases being discussed in those sessions so that you can present a case which is diagnosed to be positive for COVID infection. This may be an adult or a child or an adolescent. And then we will discuss about the management of that particular patient based on the evidence which is now present. So we will start having those kind of sessions also. So I request all of you from the Northeastern states to post their comments on this particular session which we will be holding, and we would request you to participate in that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gogoi, for such a nice talk. And I'll now request Dr. Singhal to close the session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gogoi, for your valuable time for giving this lecture. I think you have delivered a very informative lecture and cleared all the queries asked by the participants. Thank you, Minu ma'am. Participants, would you like to ask anything else related to this topic, DTA, conduct and design? I think some has raised the hand in between. Okay. I think no more questions are there. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.